I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my journey to sustainable health and meaningful success. If you're coming back and you've already subscribed, welcome back. Y'all are my people and I love you so much. And if you're new and you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will consider subscribing by the end of this video. This is part 2 of the audio that we were reacting to last week. If you haven't watched part 1, I'm going to link that in the description. I suggest that you watch that before all of this. So I'm just going to jump into this because it's a lot.
You know what I hate, man? I cannot stand when people say, when they have stuff going on in their life, they got garbage happening, and they have the mentality that, man, I just need to talk to somebody. No, you don't. Whenever you speak about negative stuff, you just breathe life to it. It's like reliving it all over again. You know, people talk about garbage in their childhood, like, well, you don't understand, I went through this and this. It's like, well, quit talking about it. Move on. I heard Larry Winter say one time at a night owl, he said, Greg, you get two choices. He wasn't actually talking directly to me, but I thought he was. He said, if you got a situation in your life you want to change, you got two choices. You either suck it up and change it, or shut your mouth.
Great. So just repress old childhood traumas, repress all current traumas, repress every single emotion that could potentially not be positive. And if you can't change it, or if somebody hurt you irreparably and you're just dealing with a lot, you just need to shut up and don't talk about it. And you don't even need to vent it out with anybody or processing your emotions. None of that, because that's not emotionally or mentally healthy at all, to just actually process and deal with things and uproot that negativity in your life. No, just push that down even further. It brings me back to when I actually got therapy after leaving my MLM and realizing that my therapist wasn't actually telling me how to change things in my mind or change my internal dialogue, but she was actually confirming that the things that I was thinking was correct. And this is the kind of emotional abuse and emotional manipulation that MLMs have, is that they disregard any sort of problems that you could actually be going through in your life, and they expect you to change your internal dialogue to the point where you're not even thinking or critically thinking about anything that's going on in your life if it isn't positive.
I was like, wow. What do most people do? My parents would be like, oh, Greg, it's okay. No big deal. It'll be all right. That big bad situation, we'll just avoid that happening again. No. Larry said, suck it up, barrel through it, man. Do it better next time. And I'm like, man, I could follow a guy like that. Because I want to move forward. Everybody here said they want to be stronger. This is how you get stronger, right? You don't need to talk about negative. You don't have any right to tear down anybody else's team. Okay? What should you talk about all the time? Growth. Why do we tell success stories? You know what you should be doing in here when all these success stories are up on stage? You should be taking notes furiously. Why? So you can take those success stories, go back to your guys back home and be like, man, let me tell you about this guy. Let me tell you about this guy, man. He got 9 wide in 3 weeks. He's 18 years old. He's going to be new 2,500 next month, his second month of business at 18. Cranking organization, had 20 people here. Okay? That raises belief, doesn't it? A lot more than you talking about the board plan just went like crap. All right. Don't criticize your down.
But just to be clear, the negative situations happen way more often than those little anecdotes of success that's literally like a 0.01% thing. This is somebody who's 18 and growing in 3 weeks to 9 wide or whatever. Like those different success stories, that doesn't happen to hardly anybody, but they want people to spread those kind of anecdotal stories in order to actually avoid the truth of the mass amount of failure that's going on in these MLMs.
All right, don't criticize your downline or your upline in front of your group or in front of your wife. Okay? Hey, look, you think your upline's perfect, you are sadly mistaken. And if you think your downline's gonna be perfect, you're wrong there too, okay? And the last thing you ever want to do is sit there and be nicey-nicey to somebody, in front of them, talking to your upline like this, but he did something that made you mad, or he isn't doing something exactly perfect, or whatever. You know what? Take your robe off. Give them room to grow too. If you don't want everybody in your downline judging you for the rest of your career, quit judging your upline, okay? They're further along down the road too, but they're growing and changing along the way. I respect everybody in my upline, man, and that they always have perfect, not at all. But the dumbest thing I could ever do is sit there and gossip about it or talk about it to my wife if they did something that frustrated me. Because now, guess what my wife does? Every time she sees them, all she remembers is that one stupid thing that they did. And now she's like, man, you know what? This business is our future. Wait a minute. Our upline is our link to our financial future in this. And you just talked about our upline doing that dumb. You got a pretty good job. Next thing you know, she doesn't want me to go out 6 nights a week building this business anymore quite as much. Okay? And you think that you're being smart and you're just kind of talking and you got to share. Oh, I just got to share with my wife. No, you don't. Not about negative stuff. When I get home at night and my wife says, hey, how'd the night go? I'll either tell her about it or I'll just be like, you know what? Broke a couple more platinums. Right? And she knows if I say broke a couple more platinums and I don't talk about it anymore, she doesn't ask me anymore. You know why? Because the night probably didn't go that well and I don't really necessarily want to relive it. Okay? And so, but I don't really necessarily want to talk about it and just, have all this garbage come out and have her sit there and think, man, this thing's tough, whatever. It's not. It's not tough. It's only tough when you focus on the things that are tough. Me, I sit there and I think about this, man. I think, man, if I show 365 plans a year, one a day, every day of the year, for one platinum leg, in 3 years, man, I'm an emerald with residual income the rest of my life. Is that tough? Do you guys ever evaluate what you do? You ever come home at night and just sit there and talk about all this stuff you're going to do for the next 50 years of your job? That's tough, So anyways, guys, be careful, right? Your wife's your number one downline. You can add doubt quickly and you don't even know you're doing it, okay? And this takes a while because, you're so used to dumping negative on your wife, you don't even realize it. You really are. So you guys trust me, this is going to be a good thing. All right, well, who's your link? Where do you take any kind of negative situations? Always upline. Oh.
Okay, so I let that play for a while because I just wanted to, I wanted to get that full statement out there. First of all, to never criticize your upline is to never think critically about your upline, to never actually evaluate whether or not your upline is doing something okay or doing something incorrectly or doing something unethically. To never criticize your upline is to just turn off that filter in your brain that might actually put forth like huge red flags on a lot of things. Like one thing that my upline platinum, he's married, and when I was first in business, I worshiped these people for 2.5 years, but when I was first in business, that was already pretty ingrained to never criticize the people who were my meal ticket to freedom or whatever. But my upline platinum straight up looked me in the face in the middle of like a social gathering and said, you look more and more beautiful every time I see you. And turns out that was a huge red flag that I should have been able to see from a married man telling a young 21-year-old girl who was like 15 years his junior, that kind of thing. I should have critically thought about that comment and the red flag of that might indicate to his character, which, like, whatever. But yeah, so that was the kind of thing that it's like, the fact that nobody actually has real friendships or nobody actually has real family connections, like, why does my upline only actually see their family like every so often? Or why does my upline only talk to that one sister, but there's no other person in their family that they talk to? Like those kind of things. To never criticize your upline is to never actually critically think about their characters or about the kinds of decisions that they make in their personal life or that they make in their business or the kinds of things that they say to their other downline or to their crossline. To never criticize anybody is to not critically think. But not only that, but then it goes back to what we mentioned in part 1 about educating your wife and what you should keep from your wife and all of the, you don't want to plant doubt in your wife's mind and that your wife would actually be able to catch on to anything toxic or negative going on. It's to break that bond of marriage, that sacred bond of marriage that would allow your wife, your life partner, to actually be able to make decisions for your family or to be able to make informed decisions about her future as well. No, but as the husband, as the man of the house, you're supposed to censor the information that your wife has so that your wife just blindly goes through with whatever decisions that you make. And that's very, very dangerous. I mean, the fact that the two becoming one, even in a biblical sense, of husband and wife being a unified unit, and the fact that he's literally saying to husbands to keep information from their wives in order to keep her mind all like in the clouds about how positive this business is, instead of allowing her to critically think or make decisions for herself or for her children or for her family. It's ridiculous. And not to mention the fact that what he suggested just before I paused was that with any negative situation, you should go to your upline instead of going to your spouse. Instead of going to your wife, you should go to your upline. They actually strategically insert themselves in between the marriage unit so that the upline is actually the person who is closer to the husband rather than the wife being the closest to the husband. It is very strategic, and it's incredibly manipulative how they actually insert themselves into the marriage unit and into the people's families themselves, so that the husband is making family decisions with his upline rather than with his wife and the mother of his children. And it also places a higher priority on your relationship with your upline rather than with the relationship with your spouse. I mean, you took vows in order to, till death do you part, or you took vows to your spouse. You didn't take vows to your upline, except for they do refer to it as a loyalty covenant in one of their audios. But it's like, they do, like, you actually have a marriage covenant with your spouse. But to prioritize your relationship with your upline over your relationship with your spouse is like, it's just so unethical and it's just so messed up. But that is exactly what he is instructing people to do. Instructing specifically men and husbands to do with their wives.
Always upline. And I'm talking about negative situations, not garbage. What's the difference between negative and garbage? Negative is a situation that's happening that you want to find a solution to and fix. Okay? Garbage is just when you just want to complain about something. And you don't have any right to dump garbage on your upline like that either. They don't need to hear your problems. Now, if they got something they can help you with, if you're truly looking for a solution, man, they'll help you all day long. I love solving problems. I love when people bring me stuff. Okay, don't talk about negative downline. Let's see. Oh, here's another one for your wife. War stories about being on the road late night.
Before they talk about that, the whole problem solving and bringing it up to your upline, again, it's completely like disempowering. It's completely removing the power from the wife to actually make decisions about her family or to solve problems. It completely leaves her out of the equation, and she's not any sort of critical thinking person. She's not anybody who actually has a say in anything that her husband makes a decision for their family on, for that their upline has actually been a major contributing factor to that decision. Or actually, if he were to submit, as part one said, if the husband were to submit 100% to the upline and to not ask permission for a decision that he's already made, but instead completely submit his will and critical thinking to the upline, then the upline is actually making decisions for that person's family. So not only does the wife have any power, but the husband is also not supposed to critically think. He's just supposed to bring anything upline. So the leaders of these people's families are encouraged not to do any critical thinking, and the wife doesn't even have she doesn't even have the authority or the decision for herself to make those decisions or to make the decision to submit to her husband, because she's kept completely in the dark about different things that are going on in the business and in life that the husband might know about, and the husband is not actually supposed to confer with his wife and talk about those things and solve those problems as a marriage unit. It's only the upline who's making those decisions for people. So now, going back to the driving war stories.
How many times you're like, man, you might even be on the phone with somebody in your house and your wife's sitting over there on the couch or whatever, and you're talking about, yeah, dude, man, I tell you what, I got 3 hours of sleep the last 3 nights straight. I was driving on the road, man, rumble stripping it every 5 minutes. And she's like, And you guys are laughing and kidding. This is so cool. Yeah, man, I was out there too. I went in a ditch last night, and luckily I got out of it. No, seriously, Jeremy, he was behind me a mile. He went in a ditch too. He got out and he pulled me out after, and they're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, that's so common though.
It's so common though. They know that they're actually sleep depriving the people who are in these MLMs, that they're encouraging them to be out late at night, driving hundreds of miles, going to show the plan. And they know that these people are low on sleep, 3 hours of sleep every single night, consecutive nights. They know that they're keeping us at info sessions or at night owls or at different events to sleep deprive us, and to the point where, like, there were meetings on a Tuesday night where I would stay at the night owl until 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and I wouldn't get back to my place until 3 a.m. And then if I had any sort of reading or any sort of different message that I had to send to my upline, I had to do that before I went to sleep because I was on a 90-day core run and I couldn't miss that step for the day. So I couldn't go to sleep until I had done all of my steps and all of the different things. They know exactly how much sleep you're on, and they know that people are in danger when they go out on the road like that. Like, this is a very common thing. I totaled a car in the business because I was working so hard to afford all of these things. So they know that people fall asleep behind the wheel. They know that they're putting not just their lives in danger, but they're putting everybody who is on the road in danger by keeping these people late at night. And it's like they know these kind of common dangers. They don't cancel anything for weather conditions. I mean, I live up in Wisconsin and my info session was in Chicago. There were times where they kept us, they would not cancel the meeting if it was blizzard snow, if it was freezing rain. They didn't cancel the meeting that polar ice shift thing that was like, it was negative 45 degrees and people were encouraged to stay at home because you could die if your car shut down. And they didn't cancel the meeting for that. And they knew that people were traveling long distances in order to make it to the meeting. So when I actually called them and said, I don't think my car would actually be able to make it, they had somebody else who was traveling from Wisconsin even further from the meeting than I was. They had that person pick me up so that they could take me to the meeting. So they know exactly the kind of physical danger that they're putting people in, and they continue to say this, and this is a common thing. He just said it, and they laugh it off, and they don't actually take value, like they don't actually value human life in this sense, because if it's for the business, then they would be willing to sacrifice their own lives in order to go out and show the plan and put everybody at risk.
Oh, here's another one too. Don't share any financial pressures you have with your downline. Okay? But I'm just saying, a lot of us get into business, and a lot of us get into business because we're broke. And at first, guess what happens? You're investing money in tools, you're investing money in functions, you're investing money in gas, you're doing all these different things. And I don't necessarily need to sit there and tell my downline, holy cow, man, I made a check for $10 last month, but I spent $200. I mean, I love talking about it right now because, to be honest with you guys, this isn't bragging. I'm just telling you the power of this system. Listening and going through that and investing the money up front when I wasn't necessarily making the money, and not listening to broke people saying, oh man, you're wasting money. I think, no, I wasn't. I was learning, I was growing, man. I was changing, I was having fun. I was setting myself up for a future. I knew how much money this business would produce down the road, right? Don't be the person that's sitting around at meetings like this, around this team, or anywhere in life, really. And people are walking by and you're like, oh man, look what that guy's wearing. Oh, dude, did you see that moron over there doing that? Look at that guy. He's got his finger up his nose. That guy's always picking his nose. You sit there, and you can have your brain so trained, and a lot of us did. I know I did before this business, to just be a fault finder and laugh about it. You know why most people do that? It's called a poor self-image. It's called, there's two ways to have the tallest building in town. One is to do the work, which requires change, build yourself up, or the easier and the lazy way of doing it is just to tear everybody else down around you and make yourself look better. Okay,
so that was kind of irrelevant, whatever. Like, obviously, just to be a good human, you should not make fun of people. But going back to the financial pressures, the fact that, like, oh man, I made a check for $10 and I spent $200. First of all, within LTD alone, you have $90 a month basic subscription, and then whatever books and whatever meetings, that brings it up to about $150. And then You have to set aside money for your conferences. So that's at least $200. And then you're expected to spend like $450 on products every month. And that's the basic minimum standard of 150 PV, personal circle. And that's how much money that you're supposed to spend, like $450 on Amway products in order to uphold that standard. So that spending $200 a month, I don't know where he gets that figure, because it's at least $600, if not more, per month to uphold the standards of this business and within this team. But the fact that it's like, oh, now I love talking about it. Of course you love talking about it, because he's an Amway Diamond. He's part of the 0.01% who actually made it to that level. But for the majority of people who are in Amway, that's exactly where they're going to stay. They're going to be spending $600 a month to $900 a month, or for people who are core $300, they're spending at least $1,000 a month in the business, and they're making, $40 back. And that's actually the level at which they stay until they quit. And that's actually the financial pressures. But you're not supposed to talk about that. You're only supposed to talk about the really super rich people who are 0.01% of the Amway IBOs.
Okay. You want to become good at something, be a good finder, right? I promise you, there isn't anybody at your open meeting that you couldn't find at least 3 or 4 things to talk good about them at every time you see them. There isn't anybody in this room that you couldn't find some positive changes they're making or whatever. Yeah, they're making mistakes, of course. So are you, right? But I tell you, you grow up, and what happens? When do you ever hear from your parents or from your teachers? When do they ever, really give you the most attention? When you're doing something wrong. You know what that's made you, what that's developed in your brain? A fear of doing anything, right? Because you're afraid of doing anything wrong. That's why the income is so low in your life. That's why you don't know why you have so many fears and doubts all the time. It's because of that mentality. Guess what, guys? It doesn't work. If you do that to your group, guess what's going to happen to them? You're going to keep tearing them down instead of building them up all the time. You know what I've been taught to do? How was I taught this? I read the top 20 books in the book list. I read Bringing Out the Best in People. Probably 6 times now, by the way. Okay? Because Larry Winter said it's probably the best book he's ever read. And I said, if that guy's saying that, I'm going to know that book. I'm going to memorize it. But you know what I learned from that book? It says to accentuate the positive and overlook the negative. So when you see people making positive changes, even though they got 3 things they're doing, blatantly wrong, but they got 3 things they're doing right now, man, just brag on them and edify them and point out and let them know what they're doing right. You'll be amazed. The next week they'll do the other 3 things they're doing wrong, they'll do them right too, because they want that same kind of recognition and respect from you. If you just hammer them about the things they're doing wrong, watch. Next week they'll be doing 4 things wrong instead of 3. Because they'll send it backwards. I learned that in this business. I did not know that before this business. I did not know that. I was always the guy that was just like, because it's how I grew up. Whenever you do anything wrong, man, it's like, you're a moron. You're stupid. Don't do that again. And then I had to really change my thought process, guys. Everybody needs to, okay? Never embarrass an upline or a bigger pin. This is number 3.
Just to talk about the whole, be a good finder. That's true. That's a great management style. It's a great way of building relationships and finding good in people rather than pointing out negative all the time. That's just generally being a good person. But the narrative that he's crafting is that your parents have only said negative things. That's the most that you hear from your parents, or when you're doing something wrong. The most you hear from your teachers are when you're doing something wrong. So he's like crafting this narrative of people having really abusive relationships, like verbally abusive relationships with their parents and their teachers. And this is the first time that within your upline, they're finding something right, and they're actually praising you for something that you're doing right, and then you'll actually end up improving a lot more. The fact that, that's not what he explicitly said, but it is something that he's implying, is the fact that all your life up until this point, you've only been criticized for things that you've been doing wrong. And now you're in this environment, and we're good finders, and we find the good in you, and you can improve and become your best self by sticking with this team, because all your life, your parents and your teachers only pointed out the negative things that you were doing, which for the vast majority of people, that's not actually the case. People haven't had verbally abusive relationships with their parents or with their teachers, and I think it's a gross overstatement to say that all your life, this is the only thing that you've had until this point. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't know if you would agree that that's what he's saying, but this is what I'm hearing when he's saying, you know, we're good finders.
Guys, your upline's your meal ticket. You're going to have thousands of downline. You're only going to have 2 or 3 upline. I mean it. You're only going to have 2 or 3 upline probably ever actively really work in your group other than from stage. Okay? You want to you want to nurture that relationship. You want to go out of your way to develop a relationship with your upline, not the other way around. They don't owe you anything. Let me repeat that. Your upline doesn't owe you anything.
I beg to differ.
Develop a relationship, man. I love calling up my sponsor and just being like, dude, you know what? Thank you so much for looking me up and thinking about me with this awesome opportunity. Because here's the scariest thing about it. Since I've been in this business, the last 3.5 years, whatever it's been, I have never one time ever had anybody approach me about this sense. You know what that means? That means that if Jeremy Berlin hadn't popped in my life, stuck out his hand, and if he hadn't been there and done that and given me the doorway into this system, guess what? I don't know where I'd be. I'd be doing the same dumb stuff, probably worse, and still on the 50, 60-year plan. Man, I appreciate the fact my upline talked to me. And I want to make sure I got that relationship right. Edification from your upline is key to a big business. You cannot edify yourself in this business. That's a whole talk in itself, okay? But it is powerful. Remember, you want your downline duplicating, so just never embarrass your upline or a bigger pin. Downline, listen to this. Your downline will usually listen to your upline more than they will you. What's that mean?
Okay, so before he launches into this, first of all, he says your upline is your meal ticket. Like, you cannot succeed in this business without your upline. Basically, that's what he's saying. So you need to nurture that relationship. You need to never criticize them. You need to always edify them. That's a big key word within a lot of these tapes that I have saved. It's edification. You have to edify. It's like you have to praise. You have to always say good things. You have to always point out the positive in people. So you have to edify your upline, and your edification from your upline, the good things that your upline says about you, that's what is going to build your business, because your downline won't even listen to you. Your downline's going to listen to your upline, thus putting even more power and authority into the upline's hands of your words means nothing. Your experience mean nothing. Like nothing that you say or do matters unless you're edifying your upline, because your downline's going to listen to your upline. So even within your group and your business as an independent business owner, your success and the success of your group and the growth of your group and all of the things that your downline does is not actually going to come from you. It's going to come from your upline. So you're the independent business owner, but all the power and authority actually comes from your upline.
Larry Winters can come up here, Aaron Schmidt, Jeremy Berlin come up here, and they can sit here and tell you that, hey, you need to get width and you need to get structure, and here's why. And I can have one of my guys walk out to me in the hallway at the end of the night and be like, dude, I'm so glad I heard that. And I'm thinking to myself, I've taught you that 17 times. Right? Am I the only guy that's ever had this happen to me? Probably not, right? Seriously though. So they usually listen to your upline. Now what would happen though if I was always tearing down Jeremy or Aaron and Larry, and when they're not around, I'm making them look bad instead of good? Now you're not going to listen to them at all. So now, not only are you not listening to me, you're not listening to them. And guess what? You're not moving forward. Okay? Make sure you're always edifying your upline properly. Okay, respect is everything. Talking while your upline's talking. I heard Aaron say this actually at one point. He was probably saying it third party towards me back in the day. But he said, God gave you 4 inputs and 1 output. 2 eyeballs, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. You need to learn to use them in that ratio. I was like, So you're telling me to shut up, I'm like, and I tell you what, the more I learn to shut up, the more I learn. You can't learn while you're talking, can you? Right? My upline's in the room, man, I tell you what, I love just shutting up and just absorbing and listening. Okay? Now, if you're here tonight, Aldo, and you're at this end of the table, and your upline's down there, and he's giving some kind of thought, and you got your new guy here, and you got your 3 little guys over here, and you're teaching, guess what? What does that do? What does that say to your downline? You don't respect what he's saying. Guess what they're going to stop doing to you pretty soon? they're not going to respect what you're saying. Okay?
So what you have to say doesn't matter. What you as a business owner have to say, that doesn't matter. Your downline doesn't care. Your downline only cares about what your upline has to say, and not to mention the fact that if you talk while your upline is down in this area of the conference, passing out nuggets of wisdom that they have to share. If you're talking to somebody else, what you're saying to that person is that you don't actually care about what your upline has to say, and that's something that they discourage. They discourage you actually having any say over your group or whatever, because eventually, if you send that message to your downline, that's eventually what they're going to do, and your word will cease to matter too. It's a heavy amount of your upline. What your upline has to say matters. What you have to say, you just need to shut up. When your upline enters the room, you need to shut up, because that upline is going to spread some wisdom that you don't have. And you need to learn from your upline, and what you have to say just doesn't matter.
Proper respect, guys. Time and place. And I always hear stories about Paul Miller being at a big meeting up in Grand Rapids one time, and he was just up there, and he had about 100 people around him, just crowding around him, and all of a sudden Dexter Yeager walked in the room. And he literally shut his mouth mid-sentence, okay? And he walked straight over Dexter Yeager and got over there with a tape recorder. It's called upline respect, right? And I'm like, Dexter Yeager's bigger business than him. It's smart, okay?
That's what's called upline respect, is when your upline walks in a room, you shut up immediately, walk over to your upline with a tape recorder in hand and record what your upline has to say, so that when you go home later that night, you can play back what your upline said, so you can study what your upline said, so that you can really get it in to your brain and really let it scrub your brain nice and clean. But he's in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a thought, in the middle of his own, living his own life and being his own person. And as soon as his upline walks in the room, that person ceased to exist, and it was all upline.
How about this one? Not correcting your upline in front of other people, in front of your whatever. For instance, somebody in a board plan saying, 98% of all America are dead or broke to age 65. Really, you just read the Social Security Administration stats, and it's 98.5%. And you feel the need to try to correct them. It's called OneUpsmanship, right? Does it really matter? Does it really matter? Isn't the point still there? Guys, look, man, just hold back. If it's something important, I tell my guys all the time, even sometimes, here's a good example. I've been talking about something. Hey, I got a team meeting, I'm promoting it. It's on, November 20th. And really, the date is the 21st, okay? My guys still don't correct me when I'm in front of my entire group. They don't. It's a respect thing. Now, with a situation like that, though, you know what they do? They pull me aside afterwards, one-on-one, and they say, hey, Greg, by the way, I think you might have had the date wrong, right? You might want to send a Kate out just to make sure everybody's straight, that they don't show up on the 20th on that Friday, and they show up on the 21st on Saturday. And I'm like, awesome. See, that's the proper way of doing things.
That's the proper way of doing things, is you're supposed to timidly, humbly come to your upline and correct them on a logistical thing that everybody actually needs to know, and it's not actually a big hit to your ego if you got something wrong, like you said a date wrong. It's like, okay, actually that Friday is the 20th or whatever. It's it's an innocent thing. It's something so small. It's not even I disagree with you about your politics or whatever. It's something as small as a logistical error that you're supposed to not say anything in front of the entire group, but instead, come to them privately and be like, oh, by the way, you may have said the wrong date, and you might want to. It's that's the kind of humble mindset, you are minuscule in comparison to your upline, and you need to humbly grace yourself, lay yourself prostrate in front of your upline and correct him very, very mildly, because that is the proper way to do things, because you're not supposed to at least consider yourself an equal to the upline. No, you're a humble servant, and you're doing this in private because that's the proper way to do things, because you respect your upline. That is exactly that's exactly what the guy said. So great. I'm over this. I'm so over this.
Okay? So, playing jokes on your upline, in front of your downline. I'll be honest with you, me and Jeremy, we were buddies back in the day, and him and I, we can cut up and we can laugh. That guy can make me laugh so hard. And I can cut back at him when it's just me and him. because we're buddies, and we have that kind of good relationship, but you will never, ever, ever see me do that in front of my group. Joe, have you ever seen me cut down Jeremy Beerline? Ever? You ever seen me cut down Jeremy Beerline? Have you ever seen me ever do anything to undercut Aaron Schmidt, anywhere, anyhow? Here's a tip, guys. When it's just us, when it's just me and Jeremy, or just me and Aaron, we goof around like crazy. But you'll never see me do it in front of my group, right? It's called respect. So you guys can...
So even old friendships, even old childhood friendships or college friendships where you used to consider yourselves equal, now that no longer exists. If you're in front of your group and your friend, your old best friend from college is your upline, you're no longer allowed to tease them or have like joking conversations. You're no longer allowed to he says cut them down, but even to the point of just like playing pranks or doing something friendly to the point where your upline might, whatever. Oh no, that's no longer allowed. You're no longer allowed to have an actual equal part friendship, because especially in front of your downline. You can have that friendship in private, but in public, in front of your downline, you're supposed to be, your place.
I know you're tired, guys. I'm telling you what, this stuff's good stuff. It's sinking in. All right, 3 nevers. Never mess with anyone's money, ego, or spouse. First one's money. All right. Do not give your upline checks with an elasticity value. In other words, don't ever bounce them, guys. You need to have this set up. Okay. Day one, Jeremy Beerline taught me this when I started buying tools. He said, Greg, treat this business like you already have. It's already a multi-million-dollar business. It produces $1 million a year for you. Okay? If you had a business like that, when you're running tools and you got thousands of standing orders and everything coming in like that, would you have that running out of your direct checking account for your personal stuff? No way. You'd have I'll have a separate business account, okay? I'll have an overdraft protection. I'll have extra money in there. Why? Because you will never find me bouncing a check to my upline. I'm serious, guys. I'm not telling you. Pay attention to this. This is important. I will miss a house payment. I will miss a car payment, a credit card payment, any kind of utility bill, cell phone payment. I will miss any of those things before I ever bounce a check to my upline.
He would put everything on the line before disrespecting or before, being financially unreliable to his upline. He would miss just basic living expenses like rent or a car payment or a credit card payment or a grocery bill. I mean, this guy has kids, and this is the general mindset that they teach with whatever life situation you're in. It is the priority to keep this business, and specifically to keep your upline as the priority, even if missing a car payment or missing rent or missing whatever would damage your credit, would damage your actual real life issue kind of things with your finances. I mean, there were times where I missed my student loan payments and I overdrafted on my bank account or whatever, there were a lot of financial mistakes that I made. And so it's taken a very long time to even get up to a fair credit score, but my credit score is still really bad. And it's because I listened to this kind of stuff. I was listening to my upline say, your expenses in your business and making your quotas and everything, and making sure that your upline is not paying for your hotel and conferences, and making sure that you have enough money for all this and yada yada. It's all of that should be priority over basic living expenses. And it doesn't matter if you have a kid, it doesn't matter if you have a whole family of people depending on you. It doesn't matter if your credit is terrible or if those kind of things really affect your future. It doesn't matter. Your upline is the priority. And that's exactly how they train people to manage their finances, is to put the upline before anything.
Let me repeat that. There isn't anything in this world that I have to give money to anyone that's more important than my upline. Why? Because they're my meal ticket. They're going to help me create a 7-figure, 8-figure residual income. Okay? I can get a different car. I can get a different house. I can't get a different upline and repair that relationship after I tear it down.
Again, making the upline this completely irreplaceable part of your life that is above absolutely every single thing, because your upline is your meal ticket. It's not because you're going to build this big Amway business. It's not because you're going to actually be an independent business owner. No, your success relies 100% on whether or not your upline likes you and is willing to work with you in your group. And that is, I mean, this is how come I had such a huge, like, legitimately emotionally abusive relationship with my upline, was because I thought that if I wasn't doing if there was something that I was making a mistake on, that I absolutely could not let my upline down for a second, because if they decided not to help me in this business, then everything that I was trying to accomplish in the business, all of the purpose and the passion that I had for the business, would just be wasted because my upline wasn't in my corner. And that's exactly the dynamic that he's setting up here, is that you can get a new house, you can get a new car, everything is replaceable except for your upline. And your upline is your meal ticket, and you're going to make a 7 or 8 figure income with this business, which, like we've covered multiple times before, almost 100% of the people will not actually make that kind of money in this business, but he's making that relationship priority over absolutely every single thing in your life. It sounds repetitive, but there's just so many angles that he approaches this with, and it's like, wow. This is like the over and over every single aspect of your life, from your finances to the communication that you have, to your thought process, to the book that you're reading, to the things that you're thinking, to the marriage conversations that you're having with your wife, to the things that you're, to the communication and the connection that you have with your crossline or anybody outside of your upline. Even within the dynamics of your own group and your own downline, every single aspect of your life is controlled by your upline. And your upline is irreplaceable, and you cannot get any of this back, and you can't rebuild any of this if you ruin your relationship with that 1 or 2 or 3 people in your upline who are working with you. So the rest of the audio is basically about, not lending money to your downline, because that could potentially create awkward situations when you go to collect or whatever, and then never messing with anybody's ego, which is just basically what he covered before about not teasing anybody, not making any jokes or anything at the expense of the upline, and then not messing with anybody's spouse, which is just general, hey, don't correct anybody's spouse, don't, just keep your business to your business, and don't talk to anybody and cross any boundaries as far as your spouse is concerned, or whatever. Even just men full frontal hugging other women, especially married women, which, some people might not have a problem with that at all. I don't necessarily hug men who I'm not dating, but that's just a personal preference of mine. But they have a culture of definitely having physical boundaries, which I don't know, it could be a little bit extreme at times, I think, because it's when you're in the information session, or when you're in a session where it's there's guests who aren't actually part of the business group, you're allowed to shake hands with men. But as soon as you're in an IBO only setting, and you're able to just fully be immersed in the cult, then you're only having high fives with men, because I guess a handshake could be construed as too intimate between men and women, whereas handshakes in the information session is that's a normal business thing to do, so you can shake hands then. But as soon as the guests and the outsiders leave, then it's only high fives with men. Anyway, that was the rest of the audio. Super long. I hope that you guys stuck through it. It's a lot of information, and I may have come across as repetitive. But that's the kind of culture that I was in. That was the kind of culture that they continue to foster within their group. And it's a lot of mind control. It's a lot of upline worship. It's a lot of laying down absolutely everything in your life to set it aside and to prioritize your upline, and to prioritize not even just prioritize your business or your own group of downline. It's to prioritize your upline over absolutely everything. So, yeah, fully fueled with rage, but we're just getting started, and I have so much more that I've dug up that goes into a lot deeper topics, a lot more ridiculous conversations, but this is just to lay that foundation. This was actually the topic of my third Amway video that I made regarding like spilling the tea on the culture of Amway. And I covered all of this in like one video, but I wanted to bring actually the physical evidence of the teaching of this person, like legitimately laying out the rules and laying out the thought process behind what they did in Amway, LTD, Worldwide Group, Brit Worldwide, Worldwide Dream Builders, and so literally hundreds of thousands of people are being raised with this kind of mentality, and that's why it becomes so dangerous, not only to the individual person, not only to their own ego or their own self-image or their own just like their own autonomy, their own person, and individuality, but it also becomes detrimental to marriages. It becomes detrimental to whole families, children who are relying on their parents to make good decisions and, make good decisions about their credit or to buy actual groceries rather than buying the meal bars that Amway sells. It's like those kind of things where like there are literally people who are surrendering their entire life's decisions up to their upline. And within my group, my upline platinum decided like they were going to homeschool their children. And now I cannot think of a child in the group as it stood at that point. I could not think of an Amway. I couldn't think of a couple within our group that was not homeschooling their children. So their upline platinums decided to homeschool their children. They were homeschooling their children, and those children are being brought up with that same mentality. And so basically my upline platinums, Ronald and Raina, again, not real names, because they have such influence over the individual minds and the individual like marriages within their group, the children who are being raised within this group, within my upline, the Free People of Chicago, those children are being raised basically by Ronald and Raina. And that's the fact of it. And the fact that Ronald and Raina are duplications of their upline, and their upline Platinum decided to homeschool their children. Their upline Diamond decided to homeschool their children. So yeah, like that's just one example of the extent that down the line people are making lifestyle decisions based on what their upline does. So it's so widespread and it's infuriating, and we need to keep spreading this message. So thank you so much. I love you all so much. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and we will see you on Thursday for more sustainable health stuff, and next Monday if you're only interested in anti-MLM stuff, because I'm going to keep it coming. Okay.